For most civilizations in the galaxy, Earth was little more than a strange rumor. Some called it a dangerous world. Others called it a forgotten world. There were even those who believed humans were only stories passed around by traders and explorers who liked to exaggerate. After all, very few species came from planets as harsh as Earth. Violent storms, powerful oceans, dangerous animals, earthquakes, and diseases were considered normal parts of human history. To many in the galaxy, that alone made humans different. Because of that, Earth remained mostly isolated. It traded very little with others and rarely appeared in galactic affairs. Most civilizations were perfectly happy keeping their distance. No one imagined that one day, a desperate cry from the darkness would change everything. Far away from Earth, a research vessel drifted silently through empty space. It had once been part of a peaceful scientific mission. The crew had traveled far from their home systems to study strange energy readings discovered near an unexplored region. At first, everything had gone according to plan. Then disaster struck. Without warning, unknown ships appeared near the expedition. Their intentions were unclear. Panic spread throughout the research vessel. The crew attempted to leave peacefully, but something went terribly wrong. Systems failed. Explosions damaged several sections of the ship. Before they could escape, their engines were crippled. The attackers vanished just as suddenly as they had appeared. The damaged vessel was left drifting. Life support remained active, but only barely. Communications were damaged. Food supplies were limited. Several crew members had been injured during the attack, and every passing day made the situation worse. The scientists had never expected to find themselves fighting for survival. At first, they believed rescue would arrive quickly. Their civilization maintained contact with many neighboring systems. Surely someone would answer. An emergency signal was sent. Hours passed, then days, then weeks. No help came. The crew sent another message, and another. Every transmission became more desperate. Their signal spread farther into the galaxy, reaching countless systems. Some governments received it, trading companies received it, independent travelers received it. Many listened, but very few cared. Some feared the unknown attackers and refused to become involved. Others believed the stranded ship was simply too far away. Some politicians argued that risking valuable resources for one damaged vessel made no sense. To them, it was unfortunate, but not important. As months passed, hope inside the drifting vessels slowly faded. Food was rationed. Energy consumption was reduced. Entire sections of the ship were shut down. Crew members gathered together in dark rooms to conserve power. They shared stories from home. Some spent hours staring at old family pictures. Others quietly accepted that they might never see their loved ones again. Still, they continued sending their emergency message. Over and over. They refused to give up. Thousands of light years away, on Earth, people were busy living ordinary lives. Cities were alive with activity. Ships moved across oceans. Aircraft crossed the skies. Families gathered around dinner tables. Scientists worked inside laboratories. Astronomers observed the stars. It was just another normal day. Then something unusual appeared. Deep space listening stations detected a signal unlike anything they had ever encountered. At first, technicians thought it was a mistake. Strange signals were common. Most turned out to be natural phenomena or background noise. But this signal was different. It repeated, again and again. Patterns emerged. The message contained mathematical sequences, coordinates, and something else, a plea for help. The discovery immediately attracted attention. Scientists worked around the clock to understand the transmission. Linguists, engineers, and computer experts joined together. Within days, one thing became clear. Someone out there was alive, and they were in trouble. News of the discovery reached world leaders. Special meetings were organized. Military officials studied the signal. Researchers analyzed every detail. Questions filled every room. Who had sent the message? Were they peaceful? Could it be a trap? Were humans ready to make contact? No one had answers, but one fact remained. Somewhere in the darkness, living beings were asking for help. The debates lasted for days. Many experts warned about the risks. No one knew who had attacked the vessel. No one knew what dangers waited beyond the coordinates. Sending ships so far from Earth would require enormous resources. The mission itself would be dangerous. Failure could cost lives, but others saw the situation differently. Throughout human history, people had crossed oceans to rescue strangers. Firefighters entered burning buildings. Doctors traveled into dangerous places. Rescue workers risked themselves during disasters. Helping others was never easy, but humans had done it countless times. Eventually, one question echoed through every discussion. If Earth ignored the message, who would answer it? Silence filled the room. No one had an answer, because according to the signal logs, nobody else had answered. That realization changed everything. The decision was made. Humanity would respond, not for power, not for territory, not for money, simply because someone needed help. Across Earth, preparations began in secret. Shipyards became more active than ever. Engineers worked day and night. Medical teams volunteered. Supply specialists calculated everything needed for a journey unlike any in history. Experienced crews trained for situations they could only imagine. Every nation contributed something. Scientists shared knowledge. Factories increased production. Communication networks coordinated around the clock. Old rivalries were set aside. For the first time in generations, the people of Earth focused on one goal: saving lives. Most citizens had no idea what was happening. To them, life continued normally. But behind closed doors, thousands of men and women dedicated themselves to a mission that would soon change history. Months later, powerful vessels stood ready. They were not built for conquest. They were built for rescue. Medical equipment filled entire sections. Food supplies occupied massive storage areas. Repair drones and engineering systems were loaded aboard. Human crews carefully checked every detail. Everyone understood the risks. No one knew what they would find. Yet volunteers continued arriving. Many simply wanted to help. Meanwhile, far away, conditions inside the stranded vessel grew worse. Energy reserves dropped lower. Hope became harder to hold on to. Several crew members had stopped believing rescue would ever come. Some no longer listened when the emergency signal was transmitted. Others sat quietly, conserving what little strength remained. Even the captains struggled to hide the truth. Time was running out. One evening, while monitoring communications, a technician noticed something strange. A signal, very weak, very distant. At first, everyone thought it was interference. But the signal repeated again and again. Someone was answering. The entire room froze. The exhausted crew rushed toward their consoles. For months, they had heard nothing. Now, suddenly, a response had appeared. It was unlike anything in their records. The language was unfamiliar. The coding methods were strange. Even the transmission style seemed primitive compared to modern galactic standards. Yet one thing was undeniable. Someone had heard them. Excitement spread throughout the damaged vessel. Tears appeared in tired eyes. For the first time in months, hope returned. Engineers worked faster. Doctors encouraged the injured. Conversations filled the dark corridors again. But confusion remained. Who was coming? Their databases contained no matching records. No known ally used such communication systems. The answer arrived with the next message. The translation programs struggled at first. But eventually a clear sentence appeared on the screens. A sentence so simple that many crew members stared at it in disbelief. Distress signal received. Hold on, we are coming. None of them recognized the name attached to the message, Earth, and none of them knew that at that very moment, human ships had already begun crossing the darkness between the stars, or that their answer would soon force the entire galaxy to rethink everything it believed about the mysterious Deathworlders. Inside the damaged research vessel, nobody slept that night. For months, they had prepared themselves for the worst. Many had quietly accepted that they would die far away from home. Hope had become dangerous because disappointment hurt too much. But now everything had changed. The strange message continued arriving at regular intervals. Distress signal received. Hold on, we are coming. Simple words. Nothing complicated. Nothing grand. Yet those words brought life back into a ship that had nearly given up. No one knew who Earth was. The name appeared nowhere in their records. Their navigation databases showed nothing. Historians had never mentioned such a civilization. Some believed the signal was a mistake. Others worried it might be a trap. But deep inside, everyone wanted to believe. Because after so much silence, even a stranger felt like a miracle. Back on Earth, the rescue fleet had already traveled farther than any human mission in history. Months earlier, volunteers had stepped forward from every corner of the planet. Doctors, engineers, pilots, scientists, rescue specialists. Many understood that they might never return home. Still, they joined willingly. No one was forced. Everyone aboard shared the same belief. Someone out there needed help. That was enough. Life aboard the human ships was not easy. The journey was long and exhausting. Crew members spent countless hours checking systems and preparing for emergencies. Medical teams studied alien biology using the limited information received from the distress signal. Engineers practiced repairing unknown technologies. Even cooks experimented with food options that might be safe for completely different species. No detail was ignored. Humanity had no intention of arriving unprepared. As the fleet approached the coordinates, tension increased. No one knew what waited ahead. Military officers remained cautious. Sensors scanned every direction. Fighter crews stayed alert. Not because humans wanted conflict, but because rescue missions often entered dangerous places. And nobody wanted to lose lives after coming so far. Finally, after months of travel, long-range sensors detected the drifting vessel. The bridge crews fell silent. There it was, damaged, dark, barely alive, and yet still fighting. Inside the stranded ship, alarms suddenly sounded. Weak sensors had detected incoming objects. At first, panic spread. Had the attackers returned? Were these enemies coming to finish what they had started? Crew members rushed toward emergency stations. The captain ordered power to defensive systems. But most weapons barely functioned. They stood little chance. Then visual images arrived. Nobody understood what they were seeing. The ships looked strange. Their shapes were unlike anything in galactic records. Heavy, strong, built with simple lines rather than elegant curves. They looked more like working machines than beautiful designs. And painted clearly across the hulls was the same unfamiliar word: Earth. Some crew members simply stared. Others cried openly. Rescue had actually come. The impossible had happened. Human communication officers transmitted immediately. Their voices sounded strange through translation systems, but the message itself was clear. We have arrived. Do not worry. You are safe. Those words spread through the vessel like sunlight after a long winter. People embraced one another. Several doctors sat down and cried from relief. Months of fear finally began to disappear. The first thing that surprised the survivors was what the humans did next. They asked no questions. They made no demands. They requested no payment, no agreements, no promises, nothing. Their entire focus remained on saving lives. Human engineering teams immediately moved into action. Repair craft flew toward the damaged vessel. Small drones entered broken sections. Power systems were stabilized. Life support units were reinforced. Medical officers requested permission to board. Within hours, humans wearing protective suits entered the ship. For many survivors, it was their first time seeing a human. And honestly, the sight was surprising. Humans looked intimidating. They were taller than expected. Their movements were confident. Their voices were deep and calm. Yet behind their protective equipment, their actions revealed something entirely different: kindness, patience, concern. Human doctors worked carefully around injured patients. Translation devices struggled, but compassion required no language. One elderly survivor had spent months unable to walk. A human medic spent nearly 6 hours beside him, refusing to leave until his condition stabilized. Another crew member burst into tears while receiving treatment. The human beside her simply held her hand until she calmed down. Little moments like these spread quickly throughout the ship. Soon, fear turned into trust. The survivors had expected warriors. Instead, they found people, regular people, people who worried, people who smiled, people who became tired and made jokes, people who genuinely cared. One young scientist eventually asked a human engineer the question everyone wanted answered: "Why did you come?" The answer shocked everyone who heard it. "Because you asked for help. Nothing more." No speech, no political explanation, no secret purpose. Just those words. Because you asked for help. Meanwhile, news of Earth's actions slowly spread across neighboring regions. Several civilizations were stunned. Many had received the same distress signal. Most had ignored it. Some felt embarrassed. Others laughed at humanity's decision. According to popular beliefs, humans were dangerous Deathworlders, creatures from a violent planet, unpredictable, primitive. Some commentators openly mocked the mission. They claimed the humans were too emotional, too reckless, too inexperienced. They predicted disaster. But unknown to everyone, another group had also received the news: the mysterious force responsible for attacking the research vessel. They had assumed their victims would eventually disappear. No one was supposed to interfere. Certainly not some isolated species called humans. At first, they dismissed the reports. Then they confirmed them. Earth had actually sent ships. And not just one ship, an entire fleet. Annoyed by the interference, they decided to return. Back near the rescue operation, the human crews remained busy. Supplies were transferred. Food and medicine arrived. Repairs continued day and night. For the first time in months, laughter could be heard inside the damaged vessel. People shared meals with humans. Translation software improved. Stories were exchanged. One human pilot showed pictures of mountains and oceans on Earth. The survivors watched with amazement. They had never imagined a world so wild could produce such caring people. Friendships began forming, not through politics, not through treaties, just through simple conversations. Then everything changed. Warning alarms echoed across every ship. Unidentified vessels had entered the area. Human sensors quickly recognized that these newcomers were heavily armed. The atmosphere changed immediately. Rescue teams rushed back to their stations. Medical officers secured patients. Engineers protected essential systems. Yet even during the confusion, human commanders remained calm. They did not panic. They had prepared for this possibility. Visual feeds revealed several warships approaching rapidly. The survivors recognized them instantly. Fear swept through the damaged vessel. The attackers had returned. Memories of explosions and death came flooding back. Many expected the humans to leave. After all, they had already done enough. No one would blame them for escaping. Instead, something unexpected happened. The human fleet quietly moved into position. Large vessels placed themselves between the enemy ships and the damaged research vessel. Without hesitation, without discussion, human crews understood exactly what they were doing. They were shielding the survivors. One frightened scientist stared at the screens in disbelief. These people had crossed unimaginable distances to save strangers, and now they were willing to stand in danger for them. Human communication officers opened a channel. Their message was translated and transmitted clearly. This area is under our protection. We do not seek conflict. You may leave peacefully. Several survivors expected threats. Instead, the humans offered peace, again. But the approaching force interpreted kindness as weakness. They believed Earth would retreat. After all, who risks everything for strangers? Surely these Deathworlders would choose self-preservation. Surely they would run. But they understood nothing about humanity. Because throughout history, humans had repeatedly proven one thing. When innocent lives stood behind them, walking away became impossible. Inside the rescue fleet, every crew member understood what was happening. Some exchanged nervous smiles. Others thought about their families back home. Nobody celebrated. Nobody wanted violence. But nobody intended to abandon the people they had come to save. And as the enemy ships continued moving closer, one thought echoed through every human vessel. They had answered the distress call, and they would finish the mission, no matter what. The tension inside the rescue fleet could almost be felt. Human crews sat quietly at their stations. Nobody cheered. Nobody talked about glory. Every person aboard understood what was at stake. Behind them floated the damaged research vessel and hundreds of exhausted survivors who had already suffered enough. Those people had trusted Earth. And now Earth intended to keep its promise. The approaching ships continued moving closer. Their commanders clearly believed the humans would retreat. After all, no civilization crossed half the galaxy to protect complete strangers. At least, that was what most species believed. But humans had spent thousands of years proving otherwise. They had risked themselves for neighbors, for cities, for countries, and sometimes for people they had never met. To the crews aboard the rescue fleet, this situation felt simple. Someone had asked for help. Humanity had answered. Leaving now was never an option. One final message was transmitted. We do not seek conflict. The survivor under our protection. You may leave peacefully. There was still hope that everything could end without further trouble. For several long moments, nobody moved. Then the unknown force changed course, not toward the survivors, not toward the rescue ships, away. Slowly at first, then faster. The human crews stared at their screens in silence. Nobody expected it. The attackers had clearly expected fear. Instead, they had encountered something they did not understand. Determination. Not anger, not hatred, simply determination. The mission had already shown them that humanity would travel impossible distances to save strangers. And now those same strangers stood behind an entire fleet that refused to abandon them. Whatever the attackers had hoped for, it was no longer worth the risk. As the hostile ships disappeared into deep space, relief spread across every vessel. People who had spent hours holding their breath finally relaxed. Some laughed, some cried. Others simply sat quietly and smiled. The danger had passed. For the first time in many months, the survivors could finally believe they would make it home. Celebration spread throughout the damaged research vessel. Crew members embraced each other. Doctors smiled openly. Engineers who had spent months fighting against impossible odds finally allowed themselves to rest. But what touched the survivors most was the reaction from the humans. There were no speeches, no demands, no celebrations about victory. Human crews simply returned to work. Repairs resumed. Medical teams continued treating patients. Supply officers organized food deliveries. As far as they were concerned, the mission was not over. People still needed help. And helping people was the reason they had come. Days later, the damaged vessel was stable enough to travel under escort. The long journey toward the survivors' homeworld finally began. For many aboard, it felt unreal. Months earlier, they had expected death. Now they were traveling home surrounded by friends. Along the way, something unexpected happened. Humans and the rescued crew stopped feeling like strangers. They became family. Meals were shared. Stories were exchanged. Translation programs improved with every conversation. Human pilots showed videos of Earth. The survivors watched oceans, forests, deserts, and mountains with amazement. They saw children playing in parks, families celebrating holidays, musicians performing, animals running across open plains. It was difficult to imagine that such warmth came from a world the galaxy considered dangerous. In return, the survivors shared stories from their own homes. Human crews listened with curiosity. They asked endless questions. They admired the beauty of alien cities and traditions. Nobody cared about differences. People simply enjoyed learning from one another. One evening, a young survivor asked a human doctor something that had been on everyone's mind. "Were you afraid?" The doctor smiled. "Of course, everyone gets afraid. Being brave doesn't mean you aren't scared. It means you don't let fear decide who you are." Those words spread throughout the convoy. Many never forgot them. Months later, long-range sensors finally detected the survivors' home system. The news spread like wildfire. Families who had long ago lost hope received impossible reports. Their loved ones were alive, and they were coming home. Entire cities erupted with emotion. Crowds gathered, people filled streets and public squares. Many simply refused to believe the news. After all, the research vessel had disappeared so long ago. Most had accepted the worst. Yet the impossible was arriving, and with it came mysterious ships from a world called Earth. When the convoy entered orbit, celebrations exploded across the planet. Tears flowed freely, parents reunited with children, friends embraced. Families once separated by tragedy stood together again. No one cared about politics, no one cared about status. People only cared that those they loved had returned. Human crews quietly watched from their ships. Many smiled. Some wiped tears from their own eyes. Seeing families reunited made every sacrifice worthwhile. But the greatest surprise came days later. The rescued crew held a public broadcast. Millions watched. Neighboring civilizations watched. Governments watched. Even worlds that had ignored the distress signal watched. Everyone wanted answers. How had these people survived? Who had saved them? The answer shocked the galaxy. Not a great empire, not an ancient alliance, not one of the powerful civilizations everyone respected. Earth, the isolated death world. The strange world many considered primitive. One by one, survivors shared their stories. They described the silence after their distress calls. They described the months without hope. And then they described the message that changed everything. Distress signal received. Hold on, we are coming. Many viewers listened in complete silence. Then came the stories about the humans, doctors who worked without sleep, engineers who repaired systems no one understood, volunteers who crossed unimaginable distances, people who asked for nothing in return. The entire galaxy listened, and slowly old beliefs began to crack. Because these stories did not match the image many had created about humans. They had expected monsters. Instead, they discovered ordinary people, people capable of compassion, people willing to help strangers, people who valued life. Soon, messages began arriving at Earth. Some civilizations simply wanted to say thank you. Others apologized for ignoring the distress signal. Scientists requested exchanges. Traders proposed agreements. Diplomats sought meetings. Curiosity replaced fear, and wherever humans traveled, they were met with questions, not about weapons, not about war, but about kindness. One question appeared again and again. Why did you help? And humans almost always gave the same answer, because it was the right thing to do. Years passed. Friendships grew. Trade expanded. Scientific discoveries were shared. New partnerships formed. Children from different worlds learned together. People who once feared one another became neighbors. And through it all, the story of the rescue mission never disappeared. Historians called it one of the most important events of the age, not because of technology, not because of power, but because it reminded the galaxy of something many had forgotten. Compassion mattered. Generations later, students still studied the event, not as a tale of war, but as a story about hope, about promises, and about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Visitors to the memorial built on the survivors' homeworld often stopped before a simple inscription. There were no long speeches carved into the stone, no grand declarations, only the exact words that had brought hope back to a dying ship drifting alone in the darkness. Words that changed countless lives. Words that changed the galaxy itself. Distress signal received. Hold on, we are coming. And long after everyone involved had become part of history, those words continued to remind the stars of the day. An unanswered cry reached Earth, and the Deathworlders responded.